settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive thoughts.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy Devan, and today I am honored and excited to have this guest on. He is a best-selling author. He is a sales juggernaut, and he's also had a huge personal transformation, which only is that cherry on top of everything else he's accomplished, because you already know at the Mindset Cafe, we're here for not just for entrepreneurship, but also personal development from mindset and fitness and it all. So this guest, I just got to announce it already. Drewbie Wilson, this guy has generated over 13 million in sales from what I know. I'm probably sure it's even higher now, but that's straight through grit and strategy. He's also on the personal development side, lost over 100 pounds, and it all started from transforming his mindset. So honestly, without further ado, Drewbie, thank you so much for coming on today, man.
Thanks for having me, Devin. It's so fun to hear the intros to these. It's wild to think about how much I've been able to accomplish, but it all comes back to just doing the work, and it all started with the mindset. So I'm grateful to be here. I'm excited to share some of my journey, and I hope that whoever joins us along the way is excited to go on a wild ride.
No, definitely. And honestly, I'm honored to have you on. And guys, I already know he's going to be dropping a ton of knowledge. So make sure you guys bring out that notepad. And if you don't have a notepad, open up that notes app on your phone, because it's going to be filled with knowledge, But let's start with your personal journey, right? You lost over 100 pounds. I mean, I've seen the before and the afters, and it is astounding. So where did that all start? How did you, gain the weight? Was it just lifestyle? Was it stress? Was it work? And then what was that mindset shift that you were like, I need to make a change?
Man, so I've always been the husky kid. Like when I was young in, I think, middle school, I was wearing adult size pants, but I had to hem them like 4 inches because I was wide, not tall. You know what I mean? So I've always been a bigger guy in general. And originally it started around like 19, 20 years old. I was, I don't know, creeping up around 315 pounds. And I kind of was just like, I'm not happy. I'm not getting the attention that I want from the people that I want, to the attention from. I don't feel good. I just know that I recognize I was down a bad path. So I cut out all the sugary drinks, and man, I could drink a 12 pack of Coke in a day, no problem. So think about that. That's 300 times 12. That's like 4,000 calories just in soda, bro. So I cut all that out. I lost a bunch of weight. I think I got down to 220-ish. Started feeling good, had that confidence, met a pretty lady, started hanging out, got comfortable, started going out to eat more, drink more after snacks, late night, fourth meal, all the things that go along with once you've achieved that result, we take our foot off the gas. And eventually we got married, had a kid, and I looked up and I'm, 275, 280 pounds again. And I'm like, oh no, this is objectively not where I want to be. My wife's looking at me and going, bro, I love you, but you didn't have a baby, I did. So whatever you got going on, you're going to have to get it in line. And another friend of mine comes to me and he's like, hey man, you're having a little success. You're making money. You retired your wife. That's cool and all, but what happens if, boom, you're up in heaven looking down and there's some other jerk in your bed with your wife in your house and your kids in the other room crying because you didn't take the time to take care of yourself? And I was just like, oh, man. And so it's a long journey. Every single day I work on it, but I've lost 100 pounds, put it all back on, lost it again. And now I kind of float in this. Body dysmorphia is a real thing, y'all. I don't know how else to put it. At my biggest, I was unhappy at 315. When I got to 183, I was also unhappy. So when it comes to the fitness side, the mindset is so important, because if you can wake up, feel good, know you have the energy to achieve the goals that you want, and you can look at yourself and feel positive, that's the point that you need to look for. The number on the scale doesn't matter as much as how do you feel when you look at yourself and you go and attack the day.
No, 100%. And I do agree with that. It is a true thing. I mean, I had a similar, thing when launching our franchise and everything like that. I went the opposite way and I started losing a bunch of weight. And, being in the fitness industry, everyone was like, "Oh, are you shredding right now?" And in my head, I was like, Nah, like I'm just not eating. I'm not sleeping. I'm like, but, you just acknowledge, you'd be like, yeah, I'm trying to cut up. And in your head, things aren't going well. I'm not happy with a lot of these things. And even my wife at one point too was like, you know, what's going on here, And so just I think it's one of those things where you can be unhappy and not do anything about it, but you're going to be unhappy regardless. If you're doing things about it, if you're giving everything that you can and you're still unhappy, you have to realize, like, if you gave it all you can, then you need to give yourself a pat in the back. If you left it all out on the court, then what else can you be unhappy about or dissatisfied with, right? You gave it your all. Just show up again tomorrow. It takes time, right? So I think that is so awesome, and you are living proof, that you can have a turning point for success, to have a turning point for the worst again, and then bring it back. Like, just because you lose it doesn't mean it has to stay lost. So I think that's so awesome. Let's switch gears a little bit, because before we go into your philosophy and your core principles, which I've read your books and stuff too, and I do want to dive into that. But your sales journey, your career journey, I mean, some of the things you've done, I have actually taken some of those things and implemented in our business. I think they're so awesome. So how did you start from the tech support and move it all the way up to being a VP of a multi-million-dollar, consulting company?
Man, long story short, which is in 5 books that I've written now, which is a whole crazy thing to think about. But I grew up in the streets. Man, I was selling anything and everything I could get my hands on. As I got a little bit older, I had the hustle muscle. So, like, I didn't want to go and do manual labor. So I kind of found my way into different sales positions. And so eventually, I just leaned all the way in. I had gone from selling drugs in the street to selling cigars and tobacco to selling furniture. Then I started selling insurance, did that for a number of years. And insurance is really where I cut my teeth, because I'd sold, hand-to-hand transactions a lot, but I hadn't done a lot of over-the-phone sales. And that, when I got into insurance, man, that was smile and dial, baby. 200, 300, 500 calls a day, whatever it took to get the deals done. And that's really where I learned sales. And more importantly, I learned follow-up, because it doesn't matter how great of a closer you are. Nobody closes 100% of the people they talk to. And statistically, only 5% of people are going to buy from you today if they have no idea who you are. So that means 95 out of 100 people could buy from you in the next 3, 6, 12 months if you have the right processes. And for me, I don't like to be spammy. I don't want to be like a hardcore in your face kind of sales guy that turns me off. So I don't want to do that to other people. And so what I learned is like, hey man, build a relationship, do good things for good people, follow up with them so you stay top of mind, and eventually you win the business, or they tell you to kick rocks. And if they tell you to kick rocks, that's okay, because you don't need to sell everybody with a credit card and a pulse. And that led me to understanding that as a sales guy, if I could get my own leads, I can write my own paycheck. And if I can write my own paycheck, it means the opportunity is endless. So that's really where it got into consulting and digital marketing company that I owned for a while, and getting invited to become a part of a company that was a startup who said, listen, we like what you're doing. I'm going to give you an opportunity to be an intrapreneur. And I want to come back to that word in a second, but we're going to give you an opportunity. Come in, work with us, help us build this thing. And that's what we did. Spent 5 years, employee number 3, went from tech support answering emails to VP of the company, chief marketing officer for a series, basically wore every hat other than owner and CEO, learned everything about it. And it always came back to sales, marketing, networking, and the mindset to keep it all in line.
No, and before we circle back to the entrepreneur, like, I will say this, like, one, you guys that are, that you guys are listening right now, I heard Drewbie speak, I was just telling before we hopped on, I heard him speak at one of the networking things that, I'm a part of. And some of the stuff that he talked about during that is what led me to transfer some of the things in the business. But more so, he his business and his brand is called the damn leads, right? And that for me, when launching the franchise, just like yourself with, sales before the insurance, like I own a gym, right? And our gym is, selling a person that comes in, they try a pass. And I mean, I could sell, majority of those people. But all of a sudden switching and launching the franchise and now having to do everything over the phone, like it was one of those things. It took me 13 months to close the first one. And it was not just calling. It was like calling for a good amount of time, and then maybe I need to tweak some things, right? Tweak it up a little bit, try again, and then keep doing it. And it was one of those things where like that message in my head was literally just call the damn leads. Like after 12 months, before that 13th month, I was like, man, maybe I'm not cut out for this. But then it was again, just keep calling, just keep going. And then you end up, things work out after you fine tune, you try again, you fine tune. So I think that's so awesome that, one, that you learned how to do it over the phone, but also two, I do want to give you the compliments that, I mean, you have inspired me in terms of that as well. So I do appreciate everything that you've put out there. But I do want to circle back. You mentioned, intrapreneur, and I think it is such a interesting word, and an interesting concept. So I do want to get your take on it, before I kind of, give my take on it.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So for me, the entrepreneur, intrapreneur, it's such an interesting place to be because a lot of folks are like, they go to work, they get a job, they learn a skill, and then they hate their boss. All of a sudden, they figure things out, they kind of get comfortable, and they're like, man, I could run this place better. He's all just fucking off, doing his thing. So people get this idea, I'm going to go do it myself. And some people are very successful doing it themselves. However, the majority of them, the overwhelming majority, fail because you don't know what you don't know. And you have to learn the skill sets and the model of thinking to be an entrepreneur at a true level that most people never really understand. And so for me, the intrapreneur was, hey man, how can I go and be a part of something, represent that thing, and also know that I'm building something for me personally? And what I mean by that is the greatest analogy I've been able to figure out is calling it like social drafting. If you've ever watched NASCAR or a car race, they kind of like creep up behind each other and draft so that the guy in front's putting out all the effort. He's working the hardest. And whoever's behind him is running at the same speed, but at like 70% effort because he's got a draft over him. So he's in the wind tunnel and he's getting to take advantage of the fact that this person in front of him is putting in all that extra effort and we get to ride alongside them. So for me as a business-minded guy, I was like, well, hey, if I want to eventually build something incredible, why wouldn't I take advantage of being a part of someone's company and also having an owner type mindset, respecting that they are the owner and they're the one writing the check at the end of the day, and also realizing that the more I bring to the table, the more opportunity I'm going to have. And the more I learn the stuff that they're doing, the more I'm going to be able to slingshot past them when they get tired or when I decide to change lanes because I've got that extra energy still remaining to go and utilize because time, energy, and effort, Devin, are the only things we cannot get more of. We cannot get anywhere. We don't get in a poker tournament. We don't get a box of it for Christmas. So as an intrapreneur, spend your time learning what it really means to build a business and the skill set so that you have that opportunity to go and use that energy when you're ready.
No, I think that is so true, and I do agree with you on that. And I do want to say, to add what you're saying is like some people think that, the entrepreneur is like the one that you should be, and it's like not everyone's cut out to be the entrepreneur, and there's no knock on being an entrepreneur. They're both needed just as much. Like entrepreneurs need entrepreneurs, right? Because majority of people, like that's how you got to be a VP, because you took outside the box thinking. You basically, an entrepreneur is basically an entrepreneur with inside of a company, right? They're thinking of additional things. They're going out above and beyond what's required or asked of them to make the systems better, to increase, revenue, to do all these things that the entrepreneur may not be thinking of because they're thinking of so many other things. And those are usually the people that get those C-level positions because, again, the entrepreneur, the owner can depend on them because they're have just as much invested in it and they have a creative aspect to the same company and same vision. So again, you don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur. You can be an entrepreneur within a company, and that's just called an entrepreneur, and they're both just as valuable.
Well, and here's an interesting part of this, Devan, and you've been in the online space long enough to kind of see this, but most of the online guys are going to tell you, you got to be the alpha, you got to be the top dog, you got to be, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, cool. There's a season for that, right? You got to have that motivation and that fire. And also, there's nothing wrong with being a strong number two.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can be the shit as a number two. Because think about the bit, like the overwhelming big picture. I don't know if you're a spiritual guy or, religion, but if you're listening to this and you're not into religion, that's fine. But hear me out. Like, if you have God at the top, he's the number one guy. Who was his number two? Jesus Christ. One of the most powerful human beings, most celebrated people in the world. He was not the top dog. People forget that. He was the number two guy behind the big guy upstairs. So, like, don't worry about, oh, well, I'm not number one, or like, I'm number two. Well, okay, cool. You're the shit. That's great. Be powerful in that role. Respect it. Own it. In the mafia, the guys that are the number two end up becoming the boss when the boss goes down. That's just how the game, like, it always goes that way. So don't be afraid to step in and put in the work and be a powerful number two position, because that, again, just sets you up for that opportunity. Now, I'm not saying you need to stay there forever if you don't want to, but don't discount the things that you can gain being in that role.
Oh, 100%. I mean, think of it, even everyone has been more aware of like politics lately because of all the controversy and stuff like that. But does anyone, knock the VP for being just a VP, versus the president of the United States? No, not at all. Like, that's one of the most esteemed positions as well as the president. So it's like, you have to realize that, again, it's just as important, and both places have their roles, right? The reason I said not everyone's cut out to be number one is like, the number one, it may seem super glorious, but it is. I mean, I'm 33 and I'm already having more gray hairs than majority of my friends, and it's one of those things where, like, the amount of stress and the amount of, like, you're just a problem solver now. Like, that's all it is. You focus on the vision and you focus on problem solving, so it's like, and that's not for everybody. So again, you be, like you said, be the shit in the role you are and be the best that you can be, and move up to what you want to be, right? But you can only do that by continuously progressing and continuously learning and trying to be better day after day. I mean, one of your mottos and your core principles is, crush the day before it crushes you. So let's dive into that a little bit. Where did that motto come from? Where did that mentality come from?
Yeah, so the crushing the day mentality came from when I first got into personal development back in probably late 2016, early 2017 is really where I started understanding this world of podcasts and, content and learning from people who have been down the path. I would wake up and I would start listening to podcasts like Jim Rohn and Eric Thomas and those kind of guys that are just real powerful. And I remember I'd just wake up and I'd look in the mirror and I'd be like, all right, man. I think Jim Rohn had a quote that was like, either you run the day or the day runs you. I was like, man, that's powerful. I love that. And if you follow me on social media, you see every day, like, one of my things I do every morning is post a very powerful motivational quote to think about. Because it's like, all right, cool. I need something to fire me up for the day. And I couldn't use Jim's quote. That's Jim's quote. Like, I got to be original. This is, what can I do? So it's like, well, I'm going to go out there and crush the day before it crushes you. Because I know that, man, the weight of the world is heavy. And if you let it get to you early on, you wake up and immediately go negative. You start thinking of all the problems and the struggles and the stuff that's going on. You flip on the news and it's so-and-so was murdered and this town's burning down and these people are displaced from homes and war and blah, blah. Somebody won the lottery and war. And it's just like, oh, no. So it was always, hey, man, go out, crush the day before it crushes you. get the things done that you need to get done, and just know that when you go to bed tonight, you've left it all on the court. As you mentioned earlier, you've done everything that you possibly could do with all the energy, time, and effort that you had. And by golly, if you don't wake up tomorrow, it is what it is. But you can at least say that you crushed the day before it crushes you. And like I just started tagging that. And every time when I'd post my douchey morning selfie going to the gym at 4 and 5 a.m., I would just, hey, crush the day before it crushes you, y'all. And eventually it caught on. And I recognize that, to me, those phrases, those catchphrases, those little things, that's what reminds people of you, of your mission, of your movement. And that's what branding is. And if you want to build something that truly makes an impact, people got to feel confident saying it, even if you're not in the room. So that, to me, was really where crush the day before it crushes you came from.
So, but that, I mean, that's so awesome. And it is so true. And I mean, you mentioning that you work out at, 4 or 5 a.m. I will say, guys, you don't necessarily need to work out at that time. Like, you have to find what works for your schedule too, but you do need to get up and have a routine. Like, for me, ain't no way I'm working out at 4 or 5 a.m. Like, I just don't like, and but I am up and I'm already working. I have a different routine. Like, for me, I feel stronger. I feel better when I work out at 8, 9, p.m. And then I can go to sleep right afterwards. Other people can't. It wakes them up. Right. So again, you need to, just like he said, you need to crush the day. You need to already know when you're going to wake up, what you're going to start doing. You can't get up, make your coffee. Oh man, how am I going to start my day today? What's the first task I'm going to do? That needs to be already set in stone. Right. So you mentioned personal branding and stuff. And so I want to kind of transition into your personal branding, but also before we do, I want to tie it into still the crush the day. So you have been able to lead teams. You're a VP of the company and so forth. How do you implement crush the day, not just on social media and stuff, but also with your team and your leadership style?
So for me, a lot of the leadership is leading by example. And we've all worked for someone who said one thing and did the complete opposite. And we just look at it and we'd go, what? And then when we would go to train somebody new, they'd be like, wait, why do we do it like this? And they don't. And you're like, I just run with it, man. Just believe it. So we've all had a leader like that. To me, if I'm going to set the example, it starts with me and with my family first. I got a 9-year-old boy. He'll be 9 tomorrow. And if I'm going to lead anyone, I've got to lead him first. And if you can lead a 5-year-old, a 9-year-old, then by golly, you can lead adults. I promise you. But it starts with that. Hey, man, let me show you that I'm going to be the person that I say you should be as well, because there's connection to that. There's buy-in. And if you're living a life that people want to live, they're going to want to do the things that you're doing to be successful. So sharing that with them and helping them implement is really powerful. And part of what I do in training a team is you have to set the why first. And I know that sounds cliche, but if you don't know why you're doing something, statistically, 25% of the people in the world, if you don't tell them why they're going to do something, just right off the bat, they're going to ignore you. Just completely ignore you. So it's like, all right, why are we doing this? This is important. And then what the heck are we doing? You ever be told a task to go and accomplish, and they're like, yeah, go do this thing. And you're like, do what now?
Yeah.
What? You got to know what you're doing. So why are we doing it? What are we doing? How do you do the thing? Like, how do you crush the day? What does that mean? Well, time blocking, organizing, making sure that you're intentional with this thing that's the most valuable asset you have. Well, here's how you do it. Here's how I structure my day. Here's how I like to stay accountable to myself. Here's how I maintain the energy without chugging down 17 energy drinks. As much as I love them, I also know that there's a limit to how many I can have if I don't want my heart to explode. And also there's a negative effect after too many because it starts doing too much. So how do you make sure that this is successful? And then what's going to happen if you actually trust the process and do the things I'm going to show you? Why, what, how, what if, in that order, every single time. And if you can do it that way, then more than likely, if the people aren't completely ignoring everything that you say, you might be able to get them to do the majority. And if people buy in and they see that you're doing it and they're wanting what you have, it works most of the time. People will always be people, Devin, but that's my process anyway.
See, and I think that's so awesome because it ties straight into, in my opinion, so like personal branding and social media, because as a leader and as leading a team, you have to lead by example, right? And you're creating that example for your team so that they follow suit. You're not just saying, go do this and you're dictating things, but you're not living that lifestyle or doing those same things in your sales process, whatever the case may be. But that also goes the same thing for social media. How many times have we seen someone on social media saying one thing and all of a sudden they get caught doing the complete opposite? Let's say Liver King, for example, right? Just because he's tied back to fitness, always eat liver and raw stuff and whatever, blah blah blah.
$26,000 a month in gear he's
Yeah,
shooting or whatever it was.
yeah, exactly. So it's like, but by you doing the things that you are telling others to do, whether it's in person with the team or on social media, that's how you create influence, right? And so how do you think, or what are some of the common mistakes? I mean, because you have a social media influence, and I mean, not just in the company, but I've followed your stuff and with your books and everything like that. Like, you have influence. So what are some of the common mistakes that you've seen people make when trying to create a personal brand or when trying to lead a team that is I guess the most common?
It's two questions. Let's start with the personal brand side, because
Mm-hmm.
personal brand can be looked at in a couple of different ways. So to me, personal brand is just like, hey man, who am I as a human being? Like, what's my true core at the end of the day, personally, professionally, whatever? What's my core as a person? What's the mission behind me? What am I trying to accomplish? Because that's really where it all starts. People get behind brands that they believe in, that they feel as though they're a part of, that they're like, yes, I want in on that thing, that mission. I feel a connection to it. So personal branding is just like starting with, what's the mission? What are we accomplishing? Like, crush the day before it crushes you, for example. There's a mission there. There's something that there's an action to be taken and a goal to be achieved. Nike, just do it. There's an action to be taken and a goal to be achieved. So the branding side to me is really just sharing what works for you and being okay knowing that a lot of people are going to disagree with you, and just being steadfast and knowing that this is what we want to share and put out there.
No,
As
I
far
think
as the team side of it, though, I mean, the personal brand is, who do you show up as when you're in the room? I think the quote that I love the most is Bezos is, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Mhm.
So personally or professionally, what are people saying about you when you're not around? Are they telling good stories, or are they talking about how you're a sleazy scumbag that cheats on his wife and eats like a trash ball, even though he's on there talking about macro counting? Like, that
Right.
all is real. We've all seen that happen in real time on the internet right now. And so I think the personal brand, it from a leadership perspective, ties into, are you the same person online, offline, behind closed doors, in the light, in the dark, whenever someone comes across you, seeing you or not seeing you? Are you living in true alignment? Because at the end of the day, someone's watching, always.
Exactly. And that's where I think that with, especially with leadership and even just in person, right? Let's say it's not in exact leadership, but in person or online, that you are your personal brand, and authentic personal brands are created from being who you are, whether people are looking or not. Just like how people are saying who you are, whether you're in the room or out of the room. That goes for, we connect with people. I mean, one of the more famous, like, newer people is Sketch, right? Like, that dude is hilarious, and it's just, he wasn't super, isn't super like fit or anything like that. It was literally just him being funny and him being himself. So it's like your personal brand, whatever it may be, whether it's in, you want to do business, you want to do personal development, whatever the case is, do the things that you are telling others to do, be the person that you say others should be, and just live the life that you're conveying to the world. And with that, I want to kind of transition too, because I don't want this to get too far into it before we touch on you being the sales juggernaut that you are. Because I know a lot of people, when they see this, they're gonna be like, "Oh, dude, like I'm gonna learn some sales stuff." So those that are in a sales role, right, and sales, it has so much to do with mindset, because you're not going to start off in a sales role and be a top performer. I promise. If you've never sold anything, it is tougher than you think, and it is something that is done through repetition. But obviously with you selling millions, it's one of those things where you've gone through those reps, you've learned the secret sauce behind it. So let's start off with someone struggling in a new sales role, or someone struggling in the sales role that they've been in for years. What would your, first advice be to them?
I always look at it starting with who am I speaking to and why? Because if you're having the right conversation with the wrong people, it doesn't matter. And so the avatar is really important. Who am I trying to actually have the conversation with? What conversation are we having? A lot of times people are weird about scripts. They don't want to follow the script because they feel like they're a robot or whatever, but the script exists for a reason. If you have a conversation and you ask all the right questions, the prospect is going to tell you exactly what you need to know in order to decide whether or not you can help them with your product or service. And if you can, and you're armed with all of the information you need to know in order to say, hey, this is how we're going to solve this problem for you, then really it's up to you to be able to deliver that information. So you need to have the right conversation with the right people, and you need to be having it at the right time. And so that could be part of the questions that you're asking to determine, do they have a timeline on when they want to achieve this result or get out of this pain? And also knowing that, again, if only 5% of people that you speak to statistically want to buy from you right now, what are you doing to have a follow-up process in place so that you're in front of them at the right time to have the right conversation so that the right things can start happening in their life? So I think from that standpoint alone, if you're new, dialing in, am I having the right conversation with the right people? And how often am I doing so?
I think that's so powerful. You know, so what if someone has been, they're viewing it there, I am talking to the right people. I mean, for example, like this is one of those things where I faced it for a minute, and it was like, I'm getting franchise leads, I'm getting those portal leads and everything, and people are clicking on it, submitting it from online and so forth, but you're just not getting sales starting off. So it can be frustrating. You start to think, maybe I'm not cut out for this. What would your mindset shift be for someone that is either going through a dry spell of sales, or that just hasn't got their first sale after trying and trying and trying over again?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of variables to this, and we could test this all along, but it typically starts with frequency. So I always say, hey man, you need to make at least 100 outbound attempts every single day. Out of that 100, you're trying to have at least 10 good conversations where you're pre-qualifying and you're realizing, hey, I can help this person, with a goal of closing 2 sales every day. Like that's the ultimate 110-2. Run that every day. Now, calling 100 people takes time. Having 10 good conversations takes time. Closing deals takes time. I recognize that. So to me, if I get 2 out of 3 of those goals in a single day, I can say I've had a pretty good day. I can say I've crushed the day. Because if I have 10 good conversations today and I make 100 calls, even if I don't close anything, I'm planting the seed. I'm getting myself in a position to have a harvest at some point. And so I think you have to put in the effort, the 110-2, and then really start narrowing in on, okay, if I'm doing the effort and I'm in front of the right person, do I have the right offer? Sometimes you need to adjust the way that you're explaining the offer to make it easier for your person to understand, because objectively, we're pretty good about complicating stuff, making it sound way fancier than it needs to be to solve someone's problem. And I think a lot of times, if you're in front of, you got the leads coming in, they're showing that the interest, but you're struggling to close the deal, you're not digging deep enough to understand the problem and how your service product is the solution, because they need to be able to see that it's the solution to their problem in order to move forward with your offer.
I think that is so true. And again, guys, take notes on this, because it's the truth. And if you're not making 100 calls, like, it does take time. And sitting on the phone, calling 100 calls today, waking up again tomorrow, calling another 100 calls, like, it can get tedious. But guess what? That's why I love connecting business to fitness. And even more so, that's why I love that I'm in the fitness business, because it's like going to the gym, right? You go to the gym for the first day, you give it everything that you got, you leave it all on the floor, but you wake up the next day, you look in the mirror, and no results. So you go the second day, give it all you got, wake up the third day, same thing, no results. But over time, all of a sudden, you start seeing those lines, you start seeing that definition, you start seeing that weight loss. Same thing for sales. You may not get anything the first time you make 100 calls. That doesn't mean you don't get to make another 100 calls tomorrow. You make another 100 calls. Sometimes it just takes the repetitions. It takes time to let plant those seeds, as you said, to let them flourish, right?
100%. And that's the thing that's so hard, I think, for most people, is that same thing in the gym, same thing in the business. It's like, all right, I'm going to do 100 calls today. Cool. I'm going to do 100 push-ups today. Awesome. The next day, I'm going to do 100 push-ups today. And you're feeling good. You're like, all right, I got it. By day 3, you're freaking so tired that you're like, I'm not. There's no physical way I'm going to do 100 push-ups today. It's just not going to happen. Nope. Not absolutely. Like, literally, my arms are jelly and I can't even raise them above my head. Same thing. It seems like people pick up that phone and they have no issue picking it up and looking at TikTok. They have no issue picking it up and looking at, all the other things. But when it comes time to making $1, oh, it's the 100-pound dumbbell, bro. Like, it's crazy. So if you just keep doing those reps, though, and you pick it up once, and you pick it up, you pick it up, and even on the days that it feels super heavy, you muster it up there. Guess what happens? Your muscles get bigger. Your skill set develops. All of a sudden, it's not so hard to close the deal. It's not so hard to have a conversation and genuinely care about what the other person is going through and get to the point to say, you know what, man? I empathize with that. I hear you. If I could deliver a solution, would you be open to solving this?
Yeah. No, honestly, that is so true. And so, I mean, with that and with you, doing so much and achieving so much, and you, having a family, right? And as an entrepreneur, as an intrapreneur, especially of high caliber, we can get lost in work sometimes. So for you, how do you, and I hate using the word balance, but just for the sake of the sentence, how do you balance, work, your personal, development in terms of going to the gym, and then also your relationships? How do you balance that out? Or, do you have a structure for that?
Yes, it's a 2-part answer and it's a little long. So I'm going to need you guys to run with me here, but this is a great time for taking notes or like making a reminder for yourself to do this. This is one of the exercises I take all of my clients through. And it starts with understanding time, energy, and effort are the only resources we can't get more of. We all know how to supplement energy with drugs and all the things, but we realize that's not a long-term solution. And all of the supplements all have some sort of long-term effect, whether we like to admit it or not. So time being the real thing, we have to realize, what is our time worth? Because a lot of people are just waking up and investing this one asset that they can never get any more of in the wildest ways. And so the way that I make this relatable is I say, hey, man, how much money did you make last year? Your main job, if you have a side hustle, maybe you're sharing pics of your feed on the internet, like whatever. I'm not judging. It's weird, but I'm not judging. You put in some energy and effort to make that money. So add that whole thing up. And if you were an average person, which if you're here with us today listening, you're definitely not average because you're making the effort to grow and get better. And average people don't do that. But if you were an average person, you'd work 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. You'd take a 2-week paid vacation and fulfill. So you'd work 2,000 hours, maybe. And we all know that most employees ain't working the full 8 while they're at the office. So like, just hear me out. 2,000 hours in a year. Divide whatever you made last year by 2,000. That's now your hourly rate. Okay. If you made 100 grand last year, simple math, you're worth $50 an hour. For some of us growing up, $10 an hour was grunt labor, $50 an hour. We're like, hell yeah, that's the game. But here's the scary part, Devin. I put my hood up and I knock on the door and I'm like, congratulations, sir. You have 24 hours left to live. Here's $50. I need you for the next hour. What kind of response are you going to give me?
Definitely not.
You're going to tell me to kick rocks. You're going to be like, 24 hours left to live? No way in hell am I trading 1 hour of my life for that dollar amount. Absolutely not. Now, there might be a dollar amount where you go, hey man, for that amount of money, 1 hour, you call Diddy and you tell him I'm in. I don't care. I know what I can do with that money, the tool, the resource that it is, and what it can do for the people I care about the most. So we all realize there is a level at which we're willing to exchange our time for that money value. But it's understanding it and being intentional about it that matters. So now that you recognize that, because it's important to understand the value of your time before we start organizing it. Now, to me, there's 24 hours in a day. We can all agree with that. I don't think we have any flat earthers with us here today or nothing crazy like that. So there's 24 hours in a day. And for me personally, there's 4 areas of life that are important. Number 1 is sleep. Because I grew up in the game when we'd stay up and do benders. And like, I promise you, after 24 hours, you're basically useless. So like, everybody's got to sleep. Recovery is really important. Then for most of us, we put our family at the top. And we essentially say, hey, this is our legacy. This is what's important. These are the things that matter. And then we have our business, because we don't have FU money yet. So we all have to work and show up and take care of the things at work. And then we have ourselves last, which is why, Devan, when we start on these journeys, we lose weight, we gain weight, we burn out, we're unhappy. We don't have that same sort of like drive that we used to have. And it's all because we're putting ourselves last.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is, for entrepreneurs, you're saying you're doing it for everybody else, and yet you're showing up with not your peak performance because you're at the end of the list of things that are important, and it messes everybody up. So I look at it like this. Hey man, if there's 4 areas that are important and there's 24 hours of a day, I can spend 6 hours in each of those areas if I want to live a balanced life, which we all know balance is kind of nonsense. But if I was going to try, this would be the closest I could get to it, because I can say, hey, well, I spend an equal amount of time, the only thing that I have that's an unretrievable asset, in that area today. So if I spend 6 hours on my family, if I spend 6 hours on my business, and I spend 6 hours on me, that's about as equal as it's going to get. And I can survive on 6 hours of sleep for now. So dagummit, I'm going to run with that for as long as humanly possible. And what's great is that I know when I wake up and look at my calendar, it's all broken down. I know what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, and I know with confidence, if I show up and I'm intentional during that time frame, I'm going to get the most out of that investment of time, and it's going to lead me to the life that I want to live.
That's so awesome. I mean, that is a great explanation of it. And honestly, it gives you a different perspective on how you view things. And that's what I want you guys to take away from this is there's no right way, but you have to put yourself, at the top of the list too sometimes, so that you can give to others, so that you can give to your business. Because at the end of the day, if you're running on fumes because you're only working on yourself with the limited energy you have less, like what are you going to be able to give those people and your business the next day? And then the next day after that, it gets less and less and less. I've done the 24-hour thing too, so I completely understand where you're going with it, and it's one of those things where rest is a huge aspect of it. And so make sure that you guys are getting rest, because you will not operate at full capacity if you're not sleeping.
Well, I mean, if your job is to help people and you're showing up all like hazy and not thinking clearly, can you be confident that you're delivering them the service that they need to be able to solve their problem? Are they going to look at you and feel confident that you're the guy that can get the job done if you're half in and like, oh man, it was a rough night? Like, no. Same thing if you showed up to the gym and the guy who's supposed to train you weighs 400 pounds and has clearly got KFC chicken grease on him. Like, objectively, you're not going to trust that individual. And the whole point of sales, you guys, is know, like, trust. So like, if you haven't been paying attention this whole time, what I'm trying to help you understand is the mindset is the mullet of the back end of your entire business empire, because sales, marketing, networking, that's the not super sexy stuff. Like, that's not fun. It's work. It's effort. You got to go and do things. The other side of it is the fun part. Like, the mindset is really where you get to enjoy the life that you're living. But most people get so hung up on seeing everything as a problem and not thinking that maybe it's me who's the solution. if I just start thinking different, if I get my mindset aligned and I start making new choices and taking different actions, you know what's going to happen? Sales. Because you're servicing, you're showing up, you're the example. People see you and they're like, yeah, I want what that guy's got. Whatever he's on, sign me up, dude. That's the move. They believe in it. They buy into it. And that's what sales is all about.
That's awesome. So I want to ask one final question, right? And this is the legacy wall question, right? On Drewbie's legacy wall, it's not a tombstone. Some people try to answer like a tombstone. It is the one lasting message that you would leave for the up and coming generations. It could be in any, facet of life. Just what is that one lasting message that you learned along your journey that would be your, legacy quote?
I mean, it's super cliche to say, but crush the day before it crushes you would be a pretty good one. Just because I think anyone can buy into that. And it has nothing to do with business or anything in particular. It's literally just, hey, man, crush the day before it crushes you. It's all perspective. Success is all perspective. My version is going to be different than your version, Devan. And if you went to our parents and went back to when we were born and said, hey, what's your vision of success for this little boy? What does it look like? It is wildly different than anything we are doing right now. So if we just buy into that and say, hey, man, I'm going to live the life. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to work my freaking butt off. I'm going to feel good about what I do every day. And I'm going to know that I'm pouring into the people around me. It's almost impossible to not have a good life, bro. It's almost impossible not to crush the day before it crushes you.
No, I agree. And that is a solid legacy quote. So I do love that one. Where can people connect with you and learn more about what you got going on?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Devan. And again, I want to thank the listener. If you've been listening to me run my mouth for the last 45 minutes, I'm truly grateful. And the number one thing that I'd really appreciate if you did want to learn about me, share this episode on social media. Take a screenshot, tag me, tag Devan, at Call the Damn Leads on every one of the social media platforms. We're literally everywhere. But tag us, share the episode, and let someone know that you got value out of it. Because if you enjoyed it, that means someone friend, family, coworker, they're probably going to enjoy it, at least maybe a little bit. And if you got a nugget of knowledge, share that with them, man, because that's the greatest compliment we can receive. And if you do that, me and my team, whoever, we're going to follow up. We're going to reach out to you. We're going to call the damn leads, and we're going to say, hey, what did you love about that episode? Tell me some more. Because if I can get to understand where you're at in your journey, I've got tons of content, books, podcasts, swag, all the fun stuff to sell you at callthedamnleads.com. But I want to know first, what did you enjoy about this conversation? Because if you enjoyed this, I got lots of other stuff I can send you to, and I'd be happy to do that. But I want to know that you like this episode first.
That's awesome. Well, Drewbie, thank you so much for coming on. It was an honor to get to, really dive in and connect with you. So I do appreciate it. And again, thank you so much.
We'll see you soon.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Cause in the game of life, mindset calls the shots. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to be slacking. I hustle hard, I go against